Here we go. So this project is called basically Media Cloud in the Caravan. It's something that I've done in coordination with Medea Choksi, who's uh, a digital scholarship librarian uh, at Columbia. And the idea is basically to sort of enable students to sort of think more seriously and in a more profound way about how immigration and refugee frames get deployed by mainstream media. And I've used it for two courses. The one that I've just used it for is a course called Human Rights and Social Media, and I will be using it again for a course on U.S. immigration and politics in the summer. Both of these are taught at the Institute for the Study of Human Rights. And the purpose here is to look at two things. The first of which is sort of the trajectory of the coverage. And I was sort of very taken by the centrality of doing that because when I was doing work on German migration politics years ago, I discovered there was a rather fierce and often pejorative dialogue about immigrants and asylum seekers, but it was very restricted in time and space, which suggested the capacity of political actors to be somewhat reasonable about it. This has unfortunately not really been the case in the US. And the other thing, of course, that one looks at in terms of framing is what are the words used to describe these practices. So as I just alluded to, there's sort of a number of cases that one could apply this to. I had sort of looked at Germany in the 80s and 90s. The question also has been predominant in looking at the Syrian refugee crisis. And this case that we're looking at is the sort of the Central American caravan, specifically in what happened in 2018. Now, if the iconic image, is the woman running away from tear gas, the image that other actors have tried to promote, and this is actually not an American image, but one from I think from Spain, is one of a much greater sort of threat narrative. And what I was trying to persuade the students of and have them take a look at is precisely the centrality of the electoral use of this kind of issue. And this has obviously been a theme for Trump even before he actually got himself nominated. Now, the technology that we're using is something called Media Cloud. It's an open source media tool that was developed at Harvard and MIT. And it's a very broad-based tool which has a wide range of sources and can be used for these various types of resources. It is also an activist as well as an academic tool. It does not hide behind academic paywalls, and in fact, the folks at Harvard and MIT combined with Global Voices to try and teach NGO activists how to use it with, I must say, mixed results. But that is one of the things which I emphasize to my students, is how you can actually take this outside the classroom, as it were. So, as in all cases in which I try to introduce new technology, I try to keep the substance as straightforward as possible. So I actually drew on a study which they had done called sort of and their analysis, where they sort of looked very specifically at the same set of issues. And then what I asked the students to do was actually to sort of take another set, to sort of subdivide this a bit, and to look very specifically at a set of subcategories drawing from this particular article, and to sort of do research in groups on these particular themes. So in a minorly technical sense, I gave them these searches and I said add terms. And what you ended up with, are sort of these kinds of maps of the trajectory of issues over time, and some very interesting sort of word clouds as well. And this was very useful for getting students to do what I wanted to do, which is not only in the course of, for this project, but for the larger projects, to think about how words matter. And because the major project for the course is for them to actually do a blog on a related subject and to, get a sense of audience and what words resonated and when they resonated. So they had a wide variety of tools that one could actually use within the Media Cloud platform. So you could sort of look at words in sequence. You could look by sources, and um, and then also you sort of break this down by the kinds of categories that you were interested in. Now, I mean, as usual, when I sort of try and teach students new tools, I'm sort of surprised when they actually pick it up. And in this case, they picked it up very well, and they also did in many ways more than I had expected. So they not only looked at the trajectory and the frames, they looked at a lot of the other resources that were available within Media Cloud, looking more specifically at sources, the timing, and at the actors. Now, I had the class yesterday, so I haven't really been able to sort of do a full data analysis on it, but I would say the results are promising. And I guess what I'd like to do is end up on, on one last note, on the centrality of teaching this specific point. I've just pulled a graph up that I've used from a chapter I'm completing on Italian migration politics. And one of the things that one sees is that as asylum requests increase, and particularly as the sense that the border, is not as controlled as one might like, anti-immigration parties tend to proliferate and to have greater effect. Italy actually was governed by a right-wing populist government, and I would argue largely in response to their inability to sort of control this. So I mean, this is all a sort of a plea for looking at at media and the ways that these images and processes get shaped, and I found Media Cloud to be actually a rather nice tool for doing it. So this was round one. I hope to have more interesting data for you guys in the future. So that's it from my end here.